Hey folks, thanks for checking into the Neutral Zone Hotel. We are an unapologetically left-leaning podcast that explores hockey at its best and worst. My name is Benjamin, my pronouns are he, him, and I'm a Montreal Canadiens and Ottawa Charge fan living in beautiful Ottawa, Ontario. As I say beautiful because we're about to get an ice storm, so, that was completely sarcastic. Here to ensure you have a great stay at the hotel are a couple of my co-workers, starting with Emily.
What's up, everyone? I'm Emily, they, she, Colorado Avalanche and Buffalo Sabres fan, and it's supposed to be 70 degrees for the foreseeable future here in Fort Collins, so sorry, Benjamin.
Yeah, I don't know what that means in Celsius, so you can't see
Warm,
it, but
comfortable,
every
25,
time Emily,
I think.
You can't see it, but every time Emily introduces themselves, they throw up a peace sign, and it's just, I know it's automatic. But this is a audio medium, so I have to narrate.
It is important that everyone knows.
Also with us tonight is Madison.
Hello, I am Madison, pronouns she, they. I also hail from Colorado, where I am a Colorado Avalanche and University of Denver hockey fan.
And we've also got Alex on the show.
Hi, I'm back from getting milk. Only took me half a year, but I'm back from getting milk. Hello, my name is Alex. My pronouns are she, her, and I am a fan of the Pittsburgh Penguins.
All right, there we go. So we're going to kick off by talking about the NHL trade deadline. I don't feel the need to get super into this one, but I think maybe we'll just do a quick roundtable and talk about any obvious winners, any obvious losers. Madison, why don't you start?
So the obvious winner of the trade deadline was the Colorado Avalanche with their absolute steal of Nazem Kadri. I didn't think it could be done. I was overjoyed to hear the news. To quote Eric Johnson, Naz.
But did you fall to your knees in the grocery store?
Yeah, that was it. He just tweeted the word Naz, and I thought that was beautiful. Yes, fell to my knees in the grocery store. Very excited. I am literally so impressed that they were able to pull off the cap shenanigans to make that happen. I don't understand numbers, so I'm not going to pretend like I understand how they did it, because I don't. But I assume it's all well and good because it didn't get vetoed by Gary Bettman. So,
yeah. So the Colorado Avalanche acquired Nazem Kadri from the Flames in return for Victor Olofsson, an unsigned forward prospect named Max Curran, conditional first in the 2028 NHL draft and conditional second in the 2027 NHL draft. So Colorado has traded away all of their first round draft picks for the next 3 years. And they've traded away all of their seconds, but they have a Minnesota second in there somewhere and 2 of their thirds. So
we're never drafting again.
Genuinely, have the Avs had a first round pick since they got Cale Makar? Because I'm not sure they have.
Oh, they at least had the next year one, which was Bowen Byram.
Oh, but sorry, Bo.
Yeah.
Well, there's good news for the Avalanche. You have 4 7th-round picks this year.
What more do you need?
You can. Everyone knows the best opportunities come in the 7th round of the National Hockey League draft.
That's right.
To answer the question of how the Avalanche were able to make the cap work, they traded out Sam Girard a couple weeks before the deadline.
Yeah, I didn't realize how much space that cleared up.
And then, they just had the space regardless. Like, they weren't a team that was directly up against the cap, though, of course, the new cap rules mean that it's a lot harder to be, like, up against the cap where you're, because the new CBA took away the ability to easily do paper transactions to get under the cap for the bare minimum period of time to build up space. So all that annoying maneuvering is done and not happening. So it's just a matter of, do you have the space? And the Avalanche had the space.
There was really strong management, I think, of the cap in order to get them to this point. And they are taking advantage of the fact that this is Martin Necas's last year on his $6.5 million deal, and they were able to get 20% retention on Kadri by the Flames.
Yes,
and they, like you said, they moved out Gerard, which was a pretty significant deal.
Yeah, I
And
think
they
he was
brought-
making 7+.
I would have to look, and Puckpedia is notoriously slow to load. But
it's around 5.
yeah,
Yeah,
Is
no,
that
it's
okay?
exactly 5.
No, I thought he was making more for some reason.
they only brought back 2.75 and Brett Kulak. So they've been accruing small bits here and there. They had a little bit extra. They were able to spend it all, and they're basically projected to have less than $1 million in cap space available at the end of the year. So it's basically just another masterclass from the Joe Sakic run front office. You know, I know it's Chris McFarland, but I mean,
But
this one
Joe's
feels
still.
like
I feel like Joe was in the room for this one.
this certainly feels to me like the acquisitions of old, and just a really, really smartly done series of moves all around. So yeah, I would definitely put down the Colorado Avalanche as a big winner of the trade deadline.
And the flip side of this is, I don't know that I hate the deal from like a Flames perspective, just in terms of, yeah, it feels like it's really, really good for the Colorado Avalanche, but that's kind of in context of it being a deadline that was not particularly exciting in terms of big name deals. If you're looking at it at kind of what the Flames got back, yeah, you got Victor Olofsson to make the money work. You got a prospect that that's unlikely to amount for much, but might amount for much for something. The fact that he doesn't have a photo on Puckpedia,
Not
So
a
I
great
don't know.
sign.
yeah,
I don't think Max Curran is going to be.
I've never heard of him.
I
I
remember
have-
the name, but I know nothing about him.
Yeah.
I think-
Yes. Yeah.
I think he was a throw-in in a previous trade.
Okay.
So I agree with the Flames. I want to touch on them in a second. But the other big move for the Avalanche was acquiring Nick Roy. Is he Waugh? Is he a Waugh? Is he Nick Waugh?
think he's Waugh?
Yes.
So,
Yes.
Yeah, so the acquisition of Waugh, I think, is a really, really good move. He's a very good bottom six center. And even though the price was high, it was the 2027 first rounder. I think that's a price you pay to get to shore up your center, especially when you consider that 2 years ago, the Avalanche had no centers, no center depth beyond Nate McKinnon. So they've made very strong moves. I think this works out good for the Leafs because it means that instead of turning Mitch Marner's rights into a bottom six center, and then the Leafs are swimming in bottom six forwards, they've turned it into a first round pick, something they desperately need. So I think that trade worked out all around. But then Calgary's other move was moving on from Mackenzie Weegar and turning him into Oli Mata, a prospect named Jonathan Castagna, and 3 seconds in the upcoming draft.
And
I think
that's great for them because they're going nowhere in a hurry. So moving on from people who don't fit their rebuild schedule at this point, load up on picks, go nuts.
Yeah, absolutely. And those picks, I think, are extremely useful. So they will have 2 first-round picks this year, their own and Noah Hannafin. Their own and a first from Vegas in return for the Noah Hannafin trade. And they have 4 second-round picks, one of which is going to be pretty good because it's the Rangers.
Yeah.
The Sens, they may not make the playoffs, the Mammoth, and then they have the 3rd-round pick of the Canucks, which is very likely to be the first 3rd-round pick. So they have a lot of draft capital this year, to the point where it would not surprise me to see them actually move a second or two if there's a valuable player that they feel they can get. So I think that they're a very, very good winner. Does anyone else have a winner or loser they want to talk about? I want to talk about a loser, but
Please tell us about a loser.
I want to talk about the New York Rangers.
Oh boy.
I'm a loser, am I right?
Guys, I'm starting to think Chris Drury is not good at his job.
No.
Whoa. Hot take.
The Rangers move out Panarin, Sam Carrick, Carson Soucy, Derek Puyot, who apparently is still in the NHL, and Brennan Othman. And they get back Buffalo's 2026 third, Chicago's 2026 sixth, a third from the Islanders, a conditional third from LA, might upgrade to a second if LA wins the playoff series, which I don't even think they're making the playoffs. Liam Greentree, who is a notably damaged prospect, as we've talked about before. Aiden Thompson and Jacob Italia. So they've moved out a bunch of guys and got nothing, and did not move on from any of the other big assets like Trocheck. This has got to be the peak of Trocheck's value, right?
Yeah.
And they failed to move him.
Well, it's too hard to get nothing for someone. He's too good to get nothing for. So why would they trade him? That seems to be the MO.
I think when a player gets into his 30s, it becomes very challenging to extract long-term value from a move, unless you are a true superstar. And in Trocheck's place, I think that he just won a gold medal. I don't necessarily think he is going to have a higher value than this exact moment. Go ahead, Alex. You wanted to say something.
Yeah, Trocheck was kind of going into the deadline one of the biggest names kind of known on the block. And because of that, we knew a bit about what his preferences were. He has trade protection, and he announced, and it was basically known that he was going to be blocking a trade to any West Coast team, which limits it a bit, but it doesn't. It's not the full extremely difficult to make a move work that you can do with a 16 team, with the smart application of a 16 team no trade, which is you can basically block the teams that would be interested in acquiring you in most circumstances. And there were definitely teams that probably asked about him, but those teams, I don't know, maybe they didn't meet the price. Maybe Drury just had decided that he had done all the work he needed to do after getting a absolutely fabulous return on the Panarin trade, let me tell you. But if you're a Rangers fan and you kind of had your expectations primed by receiving yet another letter, to have nothing happen, unfortunately feels about par for the course for what they've had to experience from this front office. It's a really tough competition, but I think it just in terms of like public screw-ups, Drury has to be up there for worst GMs in the league.
Well, I don't think there's a doubt in my mind on that.
For current GMs, absolutely.
Yeah.
When you look at their current situation, you have Zibanejad, age 32, no move clause until 2029. JT Miller, age 32, no move clause until full no move until 2028. Lafreniere, he's locked in. They can actually move him, and then he gets an 8-team list in 2027. Trocheck's got a 12-team list. Fox is locked in for 2 more years. Gavrikov locked in for 5 years. And Shesterkin, of course, locked in for until the heat death of the universe.
And of those guys, there's maybe like 3 that I'd be comfortable with having that level of trade protection for.
Yeah, and especially at their ages. Like, if you want to tell me that 29-year-old Mika Zibanejad earned a no trade deal, I would agree with that. But not being able to trade him until he is 37 is egregious. And that I don't think that's on Drury, but this is the tableau he's working with. Oh, no, I lied. It's on Drury. Never mind. He signed that deal.
Nice.
Yeah, so any other big winners or losers, or any other fun things you want to talk about?
Yeah, what are the Kings doing?
I think they're losing.
I don't know that they know.
Like, they clearly don't, because they were like, oh yeah, we'll acquire Panarin and then also somehow blow up the rest of our team, and this will make sense.
I kind of get the Panarin acquisition independent of everything else.
Correct.
Because you get a guy who might not be there currently, but he has been a superstar level player, and he's still an extremely good level player, who has basically said the only team that he's going to is your team, and the other GM, the GM on the other side of the equation, can't make lemons from lemonade, let alone whatever that situation is. So you get a superstar-esque player for nothing, and you extend him at a pretty reasonable contract, especially in terms of term. I think you do that even if you're not planning if you're planning on writing off this season, because you've got 2 more years to make it work, and you've theoretically got some of the other pieces to make it work. Now, everything else the Kings have done since then, and have kind of done in the period before that, doesn't build a lot of confidence, or any confidence at all.
I think that Panarin, I mean, again, in a bubble, it makes sense. But I think with this group, they clearly believe they're in a position to contend when they're not, which is why I find the acquisition of Scott Laughton to be laughable. Not a player that moves the needle. You shouldn't have to pay assets for a guy like that. And they probably aren't going to make the playoffs anyway. And they likely knew that. They just fired their coach. Speaking of Scott Laughton, this is the other thing the Maple Leafs did. Last year, they spent a first and a bunch of capital to acquire Scott Laughton, and this year they get rid of him for a second. And
Not great.
I mean, Brad Treleving has been he was not very good in Calgary. I was shocked that they gave him a job in Toronto immediately thereafter, and once again seems to have mismanaged the situation to the detriment of the team's long-term health. So, I don't know.
Stop giving him jobs.
I don't think he gets another one after this one.
Yeah. So
Please, no more.
If I recall correctly, the narrative coming out of his time in Calgary was, especially since it was kind of on the heels of Tkachuk, was Calgary is such a tough market to be a GM, and in terms of like player attraction and player retention and yada yada yada. If you take a look at what he did there and what he what he could do in Toronto, where it's the hockey capital of the world, there's going to be like so many opportunities for like players to get extra money from sponsorships, yada yada yada. He'll have a much easier time like attracting and retaining the talent. Imagine what he can do when he's not shackled by being in a not good market, which definitely was ignoring a bunch of factors, and people definitely said so at the time. But if there's one thing that hockey men really love to do, it's ignore a larger body of evidence in favor of the narrative that they want to build.
Yep.
And thus he immediately got another job.
Yeah.
That sounds about right. As terrible as it is, that sounds about right.
Yeah.
I guess we will see how that one plays out over time. Let's see. If there's nothing else.
Do we want to talk about the Sabres?
We can talk about the Sabres.
Because the Sabres had a eventless deadline.
They got players. They just weren't the players that were widely reported to be going there. They missed out on Colton Parayko because he didn't want to waive his no trade, which I think is a perfectly reasonable decision for him to make. I'm not sure that Luke Shen and Logan Stanley is actually successful in creating him in the aggregate, but that was what Jarmo decided to do. I will say the Sam Carrick pickup has been doing great things for us. He managed a goal in like 3 fights or something in the 2 games he's played for the Sabres so far.
Listen.
But yeah, for all of the talk, there was not as much going on in Buffalo as we were led to believe there might have been.
Yeah, so the failed acquisitions of Robert Thomas, which never actually made it to the trade stage, and then Parayko rejecting them via, holding up his no trade deal. I think it's interesting. I don't like some of the acquisitions. I don't like going and getting Stanley, and I think Carrick's fine, whatever. But that did feel very much like a desperation. I need to do something for this team move. I think giving up Isaac Rosen was probably a bridge too far for me, but
the problem is they have so many good prospects that the pipeline is just they're leaving guys. I mean, they've had Josh Dunn is still on the roster. He hasn't played in weeks. They have plenty of guys who have at least bottom 6 NHL talent who are swinging between the AHL and NHL, and I can't be too mad about them finally deciding to move the occasional prospect.
I don't,
even if maybe the assets they get back are not worth it.
I don't think you're wrong. I just think that if you're trading from a position of strength, you want to trade into a position of weakness, and that's not what I think they did. I think they traded for extremely short-term help in an extremely irrelevant area of the business. So,
yeah. I will say the top 2 defensive pairings have each been playing like 25 minutes a night, and so getting human bodies capable of playing a couple extra minutes is worth it. But I don't love the acquisitions. We'll see. I guess I need to look at the Stanley contract and see how many years they theoretically have to deal with him. Because I think Shen is maybe only 1 year left.
Shen and Stanley are both UFA.
Okay, so great. If it doesn't work, they can walk, and at that point, you've lost Roseanne, but
yeah,
it is what it is.
We'll see, I suppose.
I do think the element of you had to do something just because you are the Buffalo Sabres. you are experiencing your first taste of success in close to a decade.
More than a decade, in almost
Yeah.
15 years.
Yeah. It's well, I said taste of success, not like actual success. But the you went for the big swing. It didn't go through for something not in your control. If you're Yarmo, you have to do something. There are a lot worse things that you can do than pick up a couple of expirings. Would you like them to be better players? Yes, absolutely. But you've expressed your confidence in the team, and I think that's the biggest need the Sabres had going into the deadline, is kind of reinforcing that confidence. There are so many other better ways they could have done it and should have done it. I definitely think it was a panic move, as Benjamin said at the very beginning. But it's a move that happened.
Yeah. And some of it, I think, when they were waiting to see if Parayko was going to waive his no move, I mean, I think a savvy GM would have been at least talking through backup deals, but, I don't know what was going on behind the scenes. You don't want to make a move that's going to get in the way if Parayko waives. So, and I do wonder how we would look at the deadline for the Sabres had the discussions about Robert Thomas and then the proposed Parayko deal that didn't happen, if those didn't get leaked. I mean, I don't think anyone would have been like, yes, Yarmo has done it. He has fixed the Buffalo Sabres. But it may not have been quite as jarring a step down if you didn't know that Parayko was, one signature away from being on the Sabres.
I think that's accurate, and I think we would still say some of the same things around, well, he may not have actually improved his team that much, but he sent a signal to the locker room that we're going to go out and get you guys to make you a little bit harder to play against in the playoffs. And I think that's more or less what the goal was after the Parayko deal fell through publicly, was prove I'm still in this and I still want to get you help.
Yep. And I guess we can talk briefly about the Blues. For all of the chatter about all of the guys they were planning on trading, they sure didn't do much of anything. And I think a lot of that was because everyone they tried to move had trade protection. But I was really waiting for that Jordan Binnington trade.
I thought something was going to happen for sure. Like, my Blues fan friends were like, oh, I'm so excited for the trade deadline. There's going to be so much stuff happening. And then I was like, wow, there is truly radio silence out of St. Louis right now.
They were able to move two veterans in Justin Falk and Braden Shen, and they got a decent little return for them, first and a third per. So they now have 3 first-round picks this year and 3 third-round picks, which is not bad.
They need that. They need those first-round picks.
That's fair.
One of them is the Avalanche's first pick, which is going to be pretty late.
Basically a second-round pick.
Yeah, one of them is the Red Wings, which is probably going to be like 20th. So it's not bad. It's not a bad deal. They needed those picks. So, but with both Thomas and Kyrou, they have options, I think, in the summer, and they might be able to swing a deal at the draft and really enhance that talent.
Kyrou was the one I was really expecting to see moved.
Yeah, I mean, we will see.
I really wish we had done this in a different order and ended on the Leafs to make the transition into the next segment a bit better.
That's okay.
Well, why don't you just talk about the Pittsburgh Penguins? I know you want to.
Yeah. The Pittsburgh Penguins obviously had an extremely busy trade deadline, acquiring a total of 1 player and the player is a very impactful 4th-line winger, but very large in Elder Soderblom. But yeah, the Pittsburgh Penguins, for those of you who don't know, were not expected to be good this year. In fact, they were expected to be pretty bad. Thus, the kind of narrative about the Penguins going into this year was just a whole lot of national media figures gnashing their jaws about Sidney Crosby going out with a whimper and trying to manifest a way to trade him to a numerous amount of various teams, by which I mainly mean either the Habs or the Avalanche, for various narrative reasons. Avalanche to be with McKinnon, and Habs to be on his childhood team. And also the Habs would be a really interesting place to see him go to as like the old man for a group of really talented young players. That notion was kind of dashed about a month into the season as it became clear that the Penguins were not as bad as people expected. It's been a bit up and down. Really good streak to start the year, a pretty bad streak after that, and then after that, basically from mid-November into the Olympic break, a really solid streak, taking them into a pretty firm possession of second in the Metro, where they're probably not going to drop below third. It's something that no one, not even the most delusional Pens homer, saw coming, predicted. It's
So what you're saying is there was no Josh Yohe articles about this?
No Josh Yohe articles at the beginning of the season projecting a way for the Penguins to be good.
Yeah.
There have been Josh Yohe articles about it. I choose not to read them because Josh Yohe articles make me mad. Not because of not because of like the Tony takes, but I just think he has bad takes independent of his Penguins homerism.
Oh, I agree.
But yeah, so it's been a really good year driven by some really unexpected factors. The Penguins have, of course, Sidney Crosby, but if you kind of take a look at what he was doing going into the Olympic break, it was mostly just being there and helping out. Like the 10 games going into the Olympic break, he only had one goal. During that period of time as well, Malkin, the second engine of the Penguins, has been really, really good, but he's been playing mostly on the wing for the latter portion of the season, centered by Tommy Novak, who the Penguins picked up last year, who is currently, because of the fun situation of Crosby picking up an injury at the Olympics and Malkin getting a suspension.
For baseball batting, Darlene.
Yep.
Yeah, maybe don't do that. Pro tip.
Don't do that. Is currently the Penguins' number one center, which it's been worse. There are periods of times where it's definitely been worse. But yeah, there are a few factors that have gone into the Penguins being better than expected this year. And yeah, I'm going to talk about them. The first and most obvious one is, of course, anytime a mediocre team suddenly finds itself on a hot streak, it's usually because of anyone.
Goaltending.
The Penguins have gotten pretty good to goaltending this year. They have gotten good results from a collection of 4 goaltenders in no particular order, by which I mean from most important to least important. Artur Silovs, who the Penguins picked up in a trade from the Vancouver Canucks prior to the season. Last year's Calder Cup MVP, Stuart Skinner, who has been incredible since coming over for the Edmonton Oilers in exchange for
So funny.
Tristan Jarry, who was actually pretty good until going over to the Edmonton Oilers, in which he promptly got injured. Tristan Jarry's big problem last year was, of course, letting in the letting in behind him the first shot of every single game that he sees. Right. He mostly stopped that this year.
You live, you learn.
The Penguins made the trade with the Oilers, got Skinner, got, what was it? Kulak, and what was the draft pick first? I should have this in front of me.
No, it was the third, I think. It was the second or third. It's whatever they gave up to get Girard, because they came out of it with basically turning Tristan Jarry into Girard.
Yeah, no, that's right.
And that was extremely funny.
Yeah, and Skinner's been really, really good. And Jarry has been fine, not the problem, but also not the solution for the Edmonton Oilers, which really leads you to suspect, hey, maybe it's an Oilers problem. And the last guy, who's the least important, but probably will be most important for the Penguins' future, is the prospect who is just doing insane things in the AHL this year and has been reasonable when he's called up, Sergei Murashov. He is projected to be a really, really good NHL goalie. Obviously, goalie projections hit or miss, but based off of what he's been doing in the AHL, he's been player of the week multiple weeks. Just a phenomenal AHL goalie who's been pretty good when he's had a shot at the NHL level when injuries have opened up a space.
All goalies this year for the Penguins are positive in goals saved above expected. Skinner with 9.16 in 16 games, really good. Seelov's with 12.5 in 30 games, also really good. So the goaltending has been giving us strong chance of success. And I think it's also really important to call out some of the defensive acquisitions the team's had, like Ryan Shea.
I was...
Go ahead.
That was actually step 4. But the other thing here with the goaltending is Dan Muse has been doing something. He's been keeping to a pretty strict goalie rotation schedule where every other game, no matter the circumstance, no matter the situation, he's swapping goalies, which is not something you usually see, but it's helped kind of build a sense of reliability there. Since you brought it up, the defensemen we can kind of talk about next. A few things have kind of happened with the Penguins defensemen this year. The first is that the change of head coach to Dan Muse has been really well taken by one player in particular, and that's Erik Karlsson. I don't know what was going on between Karlsson and Sullivan, but there was obviously something there. Something about Sullivan was cramping Karlsson's style. That's in the past now, and under Muse, Karlsson has been back to at least his San Jose self. Just an incredible player, an absurd amount of assists this year. He's had just a great season so far. The other thing is that Parker Wotherspoon has maybe been the best free agent signing of this past offseason for any team. He's been a guy who's been giving the Penguins number one defenseman minutes as a partner to Karlsson, and also has not looked bad when Karlsson's been out as kind of the Penguins' actual number one defenseman, which is absurd from a free agent signing you got for a 2-year, $1 million per year deal.
Yeah. I mean, just looking at the advanced stats, Carlson's putting up a 52% XG percentage and an actual goal percentage of 58.25. So that is really a strong performance for a player who is not known for having a history of positive XG percentages.
Yeah.
Like, the long-term knock on Carlson has been he gives back just as much as he gives you, and that has just not been true this year.
The other kind of unexpected thing is Ryan Shea has decided to go supernova, or as supernova as you can go as a career third pairing defenseman, or honestly a career seventh defenseman in the case of Shea. He's at 25 points so far this year. He's probably going to be the third Penguins defenseman that's over 30 points, one for each pairing. And between him and Wotherspoon, that is around that's going to be around 55 points for less than, from two players for less than $2 million total. They hit on their value free agents. And the other thing is that the Penguins had a unexpected infusion into their forward depth this year, as Ben Kindle, the Penguins' 11th overall first-round pick from this draft, has been one of only two players from this draft class who's going to play in a majority of their team's games. In this case, he's probably going to end up around 75, not accounting for injuries. Might be closer to 80, which is not something you see from a 18-year-old outside of like the top two, which the only other player from that draft class that's going to do it is, of course, Matthew Schaefer, the number one overall pick, the runaway, probably should be unanimous Calder winner in Schaefer. He's been incredible. But Kindle has been way better than anyone could have expected this season. He basically won the job in training camp, ended up slotting into the third line center, and just has held on to that job. And he's been doing stuff. He's been doing roles that you don't expect the 18-year-old guy whose body is still developing to be able to do. He's been like the shutdown center, which is absurd. When the Penguins were playing at the Oilers, it was kind of noticeable because he was on the ice against McDavid for a few noticeable shifts. And it was like, oh, he's actually doing a reasonable job of checking the best player in hockey, of like limiting how good he is. Now, there's only so much you can do against Connor McDavid, but he's a really good defensive player as a 18-year-old. And that did a lot for the Penguins' depth, because it means that you can do things like not have to play Jimmy Hayes.
Yeah. The Kindle, 30 points in 60 games, really strong as an 18-year-old, but getting third line minutes, also driving a 54% goal for percentage. So like you said, really showcasing the fact that Kindle can drive plays at his age. This is someone who has even better upside. And yeah, I think you are right to highlight his success.
And the other thing is that basically every move Kyle Dubas has made this year has been the right one, which is, even for a GM that you would consider to be a really good GM, which coming into Pittsburgh, the jury was still kind of out on what Dubas was, is not something that you can expect. There's a fair amount of luck there. But he has done a really good job this year at building this team and adding on to this team, and also continuing to build assets.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
If you kind of take a look at the moves, the bigger moves that he did make, both the Girard trade and the Jari trade, both of them involved assets like usually a third rounder or a second rounder coming back into the Penguins. The other trade that he made about a month prior to the deadline was trading for Igor Chinakhov from the from the Columbus Blue Jackets. Chinakhov being a guy who was kind of in the doghouse there with Dean Evanston, which, well, Dean Evanston, not a good NHL coach. He was kind of traded to give him a fresh start. Kind of a weird move because it involved the Penguins giving up assets for a guy, but he was a younger guy. And Chinakhov has instantly meshed in the top six, been a really good partner for Malkin on the line with Novak, and just an electric player that's been a way better top six acquisition than expected. Dubas has done everything right this year, which is not something really anyone expected.
It's cool to
Did not
see,
have
though.
that on my bingo card. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think Dubas was ever considered a bad GM. I think there was an accurate perception that the Toronto management system was holding back some of the smart moves he wanted to do. The big one that he got fired for was wanting to move Mitch Marner when he wanted to, which looks like it would have been the objectively correct thing to do now that we have a couple of years between us. But I do think there was a perception that with the wind down of the Malkin, Crosby, Letang years in Pittsburgh, that he would be called upon to manage kind of a graceful ending for those stars and the arrival of a new group. And with 3 playoff misses, I don't think that was the wrong expectation, but has managed to. I have a question for you, and I don't know if you're ready to take questions on this, but I have a question for you, and I'm just going to ask it now. Is this sustainable, or is this a one-year thing in your opinion? And if this is a one-year thing, how deep do you think they can actually go in the playoffs?
Whether or not this is sustainable depends a lot on what the class of prospects who are kind of at the cusp end up looking like. There's a group of guys, your Rucker McGroarty, your Owen Pickering, or your a better one for that one would actually be where are you? Harrison Bernicki. Your players who you'd expect to be in the NHL over the next couple of years end up looking like. And also what the draft picks end up being. Because if there's one thing that I'm extremely confident in Kyle Dubas as a GM, it's hitting on a first-round draft pick from like even in the back half of that first round to become a pretty good NHL contributor. He didn't have a lot of bites at that particular apple with the Maple Leafs because the Maple Leafs were in win now mode. But the players that he did acquire kind of over his history, there's been a total of one that kind of hasn't lived up to the expectations of a back half of the first half of the second type NHL player. And that's because he never made the league, because he passed away in a tragic incident.
Yeah.
You look at what he's kind of done with his draft picks so far. The 3 first rounders that the Pens had over the last in the 2025 draft have been the 11th overall, who is a full-time NHL player his first year. The other ones are Bill Zonin, who is having basically the season you would want from a D+1 draft prospect in the CHL. Basically took his game up a level. He's 39 points, but he's also had a injury that he's lost a decent amount of the season too. But he's on track of what you would want. The other guy is the one that the Penguins took at I think either 31st or 32nd, William Horcroft, who was at the time kind of a questionable pick in the sense that he was hated by NHL equivalency models because he was a guy who lost a bunch of a season to injury and also only played part of an NCAA season and part of a U.S. developmental team season. He has been at this point in time one of the top 5 scorers in the NCAA. He was a guy you kind of drafted on the old boy philosophy of you can't teach size, and he is a very large person. But he's also had a season better than what you would expect from a back half of the first, early part of the second season. He had a really good draft last year, it looks like. Pretty much every signing has also worked out, at least signing that he made this season, where you've got guys like Anthony Mantha has been incredible for the Penguins, kind of signed as your typical, we expect to trade this guy as a deadline free agent, at the deadline for like a second free agent signing. Obviously, that trade didn't happen because he's more valuable to the Penguins right now. You have Justin Brazeau, who's kind of always been a late bloomer over his developmental career, and that has kind of continued with the Penguins. He's kind of fallen off a bit as the season goes on, but he's still 16 goals, 14 assists for 30 points for a guy that you're paying $1.5 million for. And that's kind of the biggest portion of the Penguins' success this year is they've really hit on those bargain bin free agents. And it's meshed out really well. When the Penguins were kind of at their peak going into the Olympic break, they had 4 equally potent lines because you obviously had Crosby and Malkin being your big offensive threats, but you also have a guy like Connor Dewar who is giving you 25 points so far this year from your 4th line. And that's a lot. And that's kind of the biggest, the collection of just kind of hitting on these scratch off free agents is the biggest reason why the Penguins are successful. And it's also the biggest reason why I kind of, to loop all the way back around to the question that I kind of got off track on, it's the biggest mark about this being a sustainable thing because you're not going to be able to bring back all of these guys. And some of these guys, it's going to be because they're on a heater versus it being anything sustainable. I don't know what to expect going forward, but also the way that Dubas has operated this year, it's kind of clear that he doesn't know what to expect going forward either because he has not made any moves to really threaten the Penguins' future for the current moment. As I said before, pretty much any move that he has made has involved some sort of assets coming back in. A lot of times the Penguins have been a team with a lot of cap space, so we will take your Jimmy Hayes and we will deal with that full freight if you give us a draft pick to go with it. Because of the way that they changed the cap rules and eliminated double retention, there wasn't as much space for the Penguins to be a cap sin eater this offseason or this trade deadline. But if there was, you probably would have seen the Penguins pick up another couple of 3rd-round picks just because they've got a bunch of space that they're not doing anything with.
All right. Well, it sounds like, I mean, obviously we won't know if it's repeatable until next year, but it does sound like there is at least a little bit of a hope there.
The other thing is, and this is a bit me getting extremely fan-brained optimistic here, is if Merchev hits his ceiling that's expected, the Penguins have a top 5 goaltender in the world, which is, I don't think it'll actually be like that, but if it does end up like that, that papers over a lot of the other like flaws that might occur. And it's possible, which is not something you can say about every goalie prospect. Like I said, I don't think it'll happen, but it's possible.
All right. Well, I think that pretty much sums it up. So, any final thoughts? All right, folks, we're going to pitch on over to another one of our Alan Eagleson segments. So stay tuned and you'll be hearing from that in a moment.
Yeehaw.
Hey, folks, thanks for joining. We're going to continue with another episode of Hockey's Greatest Bastards, the story of Alan Eagleson. I'm joined by Emily.
Hey.
SJ.
Hello.
And Trevor.
Hoy, hoy.
Can I get this whole bowl?
And Leaf.
Oh, thank you.
Oh.
My raspberries.
Oh, what a gentleman.
I just ate a cough drop, though, so I have to wait.
You gotta wait. All right, folks, we ended up with a brief touch on Hockey Canada slush funds. So let's talk about slush funds and Alan Eagleson. Hockey Canada had become a primary source of revenue for Eagleson and his myriad of owned and aligned businesses. We talked previously about how Eagleson used a combination of Harold Ballard and Bobby Orr's money to take over TV advertising for the 1972 Summit Series. Eagle used the service of his loyal acolyte, Arthur Harnett, to sell the ad space. He lifted $100,000 off the top through fees and lawyer bills and stuff. He then turned half the remaining money over to the NHL for pensions, which the NHL used to offset their own obligations, and half the money to Hockey Canada, where he paid himself directly for performance and indirectly by licensing out his employees and properties to the organization. The 50% that went to the NHLPA was supposed to be contributed directly to the NHL Pension Society, but instead the NHLPA gave the money to the NHL to replace their pension contribution requirements. The NHLPA then paid Eagleson and his business through multiple sources, such as his properties and by retaining the law firm Eagleson Ungerman for their business. Eagleson Ungerman billed, for example, the NHLPA for $918,000 from 1987 to 1991. Another way that the money was used, Marty's, a clothier in Toronto who was favored by Canadian elites like Pierre Trudeau and Ontario Premier William Davis, would often see friends of Eagleson with vouchers for suits. Some of them had been paid by Hockey Canada, some of them by the NHLPA. So basically, Eagleson would give these vouchers out to his buddies. Go get yourself a suit at Marty's on the NHLPA.
Nice.
During the same
love the fact. Okay, I love the fact that his level of corruption is so complete. He would do the little corrupt things that really matter, as well as the big corrupt things. No level of corruption went unplumbed.
If there was a single dollar that he could get his hands on and misappropriate, he was gonna do it.
That's right.
As an example, during that same period of time, 87 to 91, the NHLPA paid for $217,000 of promotions, gifts, and awards, $24,000 for rent on an apartment in London England, $19,200 for golf and tennis club memberships, and $2,130 for YMCA memberships for Eagleson and Sam Simpson.
Is that a membership to every YMCA in the world?
I don't know the answer to that question.
Now I'm just picturing Alan Eagleson doing yoga down at the YMCA.
Yes.
On a lazy Sunday morning.
He was a big YMCA guy. He swam because he could usually swim there. He was big in swimming. He could play tennis, the lacrosse games in the fields. He was, to his credit, a very active man. Got to give him that.
I learned to swim at the Y.
Not a fat slob, Alan Eagleson. Just a real piece of shit. So the rest of the money that didn't get paid to the NHL to offset their pension contributions and to get absorbed by the Alan Eagleson vortex of corruption was moved into what was called a bonus pension pool. This money had been generated by the players through their participation in international hockey and had been earmarked for pension contributions. But the NHL didn't need all the money. Especially during the 1980s, as we've discussed, interest rates on the existing pension plan provided such a return that the NHL owners were swimming in players' money they were using for their own. $13 million of the players' own money was used to create a contribution holiday for the NHL. And as a reminder, a contribution holiday is when the executors of the plan, which in this case was the NHL because they had excluded all players, they used additional profits from the pension plan to make it so they didn't have to contribute as much money rather than putting that money into the pensions of the players who were living on the pensions. This led to players like Bobby Orr or Gordie Howe making $10,000, $13,000 a year on their pensions. Ridiculously low money. Eagleson was not interested in fighting the NHL for this money. Why? Well, he simply put, if the surplus funds in the NHL Pension Society were turned over to the players, then the NHL would need to resume contributions. So they would go to the NHLPA for their portion of the monies generated by international hockey, which would reduce or eliminate the monies going to the bonus pension pool. When we see how the bonus pension pool money was employed, it makes sense why Eagleson wasn't interested in helping the retired players get their proper share of money. The bonus pension pool was in fact being used to provide advantageous mortgages to Eagleson's allies and friends to the tunes of millions of dollars. We know that during the So remember, during the 70s, he was using player money to fund the activities that he wanted to do, the sports camps and the medical clinics and the pizza parlors. He used Bobby Orr's money and Mike Walton and Wilf Pymont. He did the same for Rick Middleton when Nan-Jill Investments needed money to cover buying a stake in Pony Sporting Goods. He used Rick Middleton's money to loan to Nan-Jill so they could buy money in the Pony scheme. Middleton's money was so distributed amongst Eagleson's holdings, allies, and other players that Eagleson eventually took out a loan in Middleton's name to provide Rick Middleton with liquidity he needed to get through regular life.
Sick man.
However, after he lost a bunch of his players, this wasn't as viable of an option, so he turned to the money he had direct control over. So Ross Conway did most of the work on these mortgages and is the reason why Alan Eagleson ended up going to prison. So I'm going to read an extensive quote from his book, Game Misconduct, which is one of the best investigations possible. Like, highly recommended. This is going to blow your mind. In 1976, Eagleson had bought a house in the Rosedale area of Toronto at 30 Rosedale Road for $350,000, borrowing money from two of his hockey clients, Bobby Orr and Marcel Dion, to finance it. In 1981, after Orr had severed ties with Eagleson took out a $600,000 mortgage on the property from the Canadian Imperial Bank of Commerce, the CIBC. In 1982, Norman Donaldson took ownership of the house. With the CIBC mortgage in place, Donaldson took out a mortgage from Eagleson himself on the property at $1.25 million. He also got a $1.15 million construction loan from Harcom Consultants Limited, run by Alan Eagleson ally Arthur Harnett. When the property was finally sold again in 1983, it was sold for only $1.09 million. The mortgages then vanished from the property. Despite the history of late payments on the Donaldson loans, the NHL Players Association continuously extended them. Due in 1982, it was renewed for another year, restructured in 1983, even though no interest had been paid since August, then extended in January 1984, reminding Donaldson to pay his back taxes. In November 1984, the loan came due again. 9 months later, it remained unpaid, with more than $10,000 in late interest payments accumulated. So you try not paying your mortgage for 9 months and see how your bank reacts. What did the Players Association do in 1985? It amended the loan, extending it to 1986.
Is this a house?
This is a mansion. It is a mansion that was owned by Eagleson, and Alan Eagleson lived in it, but he sold it, and they said they were going to redevelop it into condos, which allowed them to license a mortgage from Arthur Harnett. Eagleson Ungerman does all the paperwork on this stuff. They move the money around. It bounces left and right. Alan Eagleson forgives the loans, or he extends them and forgives the interest. At the end of the day, Eagleson sells the house and walks away with the extra money, and then they write off the mortgages because no money actually ever moved, or if it did move, it was put back. But he pays himself constantly off of this stuff. And in the meantime, he's helping out a buddy who's trying to look like he's running a business.
Oh my god. This is absurd.
Huh. Yeah.
It's wild. Eagleson had gotten his original experience in real estate at his first law firm, second law firm, Blaney Pasternak. No relation to David.
I mean, you got to specify these things. This is hockey.
It is spelled
Given
differently.
how many times it's been, this is the Norrises of the Norris family, and
Is Josh Norris related to the Norrises of the Norris family?
He is not. He is not. The
Okay.
Norris of the Norris family are American.
Well, that doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
These things cross the border all the time, these families.
this is true.
Back and forth. Even the Kachucks are actually Canadian. Or also Canadian.
Half Canadian, yeah.
We don't want them. You can have them.
It doesn't mean it's not true.
Yeah,
Actually, Brady's okay. He at least knows how to shut his mouth. Matt doesn't. Loans handed out by the NHLPA in the 1980s included $500,000 to Howard Ungerman, the father of Eagleson's law partner Irving, for the purchase of land near Collingwood, Ontario for development. Remember Walker Heights? There you go. In addition to the large Toronto building mentioned above, Donaldson had loans in relation to a townhouse project he was developing. When he failed to pay taxes on the project in 1985, the NHLPA renewed the loan anyway. Donaldson was supposed to redevelop the Rosedale house into 5 condos, but the house was a single unit in 1993 when the authors of the books looked into this. The Collingwood property, purchased by Howard Ungerman and financed in part by the NHLPA, as well as $100,000 that Jill Eagleson happened to have, 23 years old in law school, was broken into lots that were sold to Eagleson allies: Sam Simpson, Robert Fung, Marvin Goldblatt, John Cadwell, James Bull, who was the brother of Hockey Canada team Dr. Charles Bull, who was an Eagleson ally, as well as Eagleson-owned and aligned companies like Jalson Holdings, Kingsmar Holdings. Kingsmar Holdings is, I can't remember what it's based on. I looked it up and it's really stupid. And Raycon Consultants. The company created by Ungerman to manage these properties and their sales, Montera Properties, reported a profit of $848,000 and referred the bulk of the legal work for the sale and move of these properties to guess which law firm? Any guesses?
The Eaglesons?
Eagleson Ungerman. Eagleson was on the board of directors for Montera. However, during this time, the average value of land in Collingwood plummeted. There was because of the downturn in the economy and just a general lack of desire in Collingwood to develop, basically that whole area of Ontario, the value of the land dropped by about 60%. Yet they were still making all this money.
Where did it come from?
Where did it come from? The NHLPA made a loan of $395,000 to Tesson, a property management company partially run by Donaldson. $320,000 to David Baker, who sold Alan Eagleson his cars. $1.2 million to Marvin Tepperman, who bought a shopping plaza in Burlington, Ontario. He funded an $87,000 mortgage for a reporter from the Globe and Mail, and $400,000 for Howard Ungerman to buy an industrial building in Scarborough. To get a little bit more technical, these were not standard mortgages. They are what's called interest-only mortgages. So that means the client only pays the interest back to the lender, with the principal coming due at the end of the loan period. These are often second mortgages. Conway spoke with several bankers and investment advisors for their takes on these loans, and he got advice from a man named John Leeson, who said, "I do not see how any rational lender could hit serious delinquency, power of sale, and then not only renew and increase the loan, but reduce the rate on unfavorable terms, such as agreeing to allow a new first to be registered without prepayment of your existing mortgage." Talk about giving the shop away.
Yeah.
I mean, talk about not being a reasonable lender.
The loans appear to have been made as if they were Eagleson's own money. When loaning your own funds out, you do not have to consider the decisions you are making. The losses are yours alone. But if you are a solicitor or a mortgage company, loaning on behalf of some other persons or groups, then it is incumbent upon you to take precautions to ensure the funds are invested wisely. He should know these things. This is Alan Eagleson we're talking about. Alan Eagleson, Queen's Counsel. We're not talking about Mary from Milwaukee.
Mary from Milwaukee wouldn't have done this.
Also true.
I mean, you have to think Bobby Orr would have been better served if he just gave his money to Mary from Milwaukee.
I mean, she probably would have done an honest job. And that's like half the battle.
Another choice comment is from Lorraine Mahoney, a benefits and pension expert, who said, "This appears to be an example of blue chips turning into cow chips."
Trevor's face.
Good. I like it. I like a good poop reference, though, because I'm a child.
That's why you need Corinne Schroeder to get stuff off your top shelf.
That's right.
This is going to come out many weeks after we made that joke, so that is a callback. There was another final loan of note. This one blows my fucking mind. As the Cleveland Barons were careening towards obliteration, Alan Eagleson loaned $600,000 of the players' money to the Barons and their owners, George and Gordon Gund, to keep the team stable through the end of the 1977 season. Eagleson said he wasn't sure he had the authority to do it, but John Ziegler had asked him to do it. Ziegler at the time was the lead counsel for the NHL. What made it especially egregious is that the loan was not just funded by the NHLPA's cash or slush funds. He personally used player money to fund it.
That's so fucked.
Of course you did.
Eagleson inserted approval of the loan from player reps and NHLPA president Bobby Clark into the minutes for the NHLPA. Brad Park and Terry O'Reilly denied knowing about the loan to the Barons. Perhaps coincidentally, 9 of the 19 players on the Barons were Alan Eagleson clients.
Who could have seen this coming?
The lawyer who handled the loan's financial transactions and received the finder's fee for the loan was, coincidentally, Alan Eagleson.
No way.
My goodness. I'm insert
Shocker.
peek a surprise emoji here.
I just find it wild that he just took money from players and loaned it to the Guns. The Guns were filthy rich. They just didn't spend money on hockey. The Guns would eventually come back into hockey. I believe they bought the Sharks franchise out of Minnesota, out of the North Stars. Filthy rich, just complete loser assholes.
Oh, they sound like Alan Eagleson's type people.
Yeah.
Alan Eagleson's type of people. So did any of the players know what Eagleson and Simpson were doing with their money? Sam Simpson wrote a memo in 1983 to Eagleson claiming, "I have now spoken to the investment committee to redo the Tesson mortgage." But players that Conway spoke to, including team reps and members of the executive committee, had no idea about an investment committee. Here's a quote from Mike Mowbray. Investment committee. Oh, yeah. So one of the weird things about this story, Emily, is that Mike Milbury's a good guy.
Oh,
That's how bad Alan.
That is not a great sign. It takes
Alan Eagleson. He's that bad.
Yeah, it takes somebody special to make Mike Milbury look like the good guy in the story.
Kept his shoes on.
Yes.
So this full thing is a quote from Conway again. Investment committee. We didn't have any investment committee, said Mike Milbury, the Bruins player representative until 1982 and a critic of Eagleson. If I had known about loans or any of that stuff, an investment committee or Eagle using our money to loan to his friends, you know darn well I would have asked questions. There's a good reason why Milbury never heard of the investment committee. When questioned under oath, Simpson admitted it didn't exist.
Of course not.
Well, I mean, it existed. It just consisted of one man.
Yeah, it was
Fair.
Alan Eagleson.
Fair.
Well, and Sam Simpson. Come on.
Yeah.
Come on.
I don't think they took minutes of their meetings, though.
Though they did, but then he would just put things in the minutes after, you know? The NHLPA was not structured back then the same way it is now. Today, the board is 32 player reps, one from each team. Back then, each team had a player rep and a panel of appointed executive members that were responsible for the day-to-day approvals of Eagleson's activity.
All of whom were appointed by Eagleson.
That's right. So he would pick loyal players like Bob Pulford, Bobby Clark, Bob Gainey, Brian Trottier, Tony and Phil Esposito, Daryl Sittler, and Lanny McDonald. Yes, the stink touches Lanny McDonald.
That's unfortunate.
So it is no surprise the only player who ever went on the record as knowing about the mortgages was Brian Trottier. I can just remember one or two times Sam Simpson would call me up and say, "These things came due. I'm just letting you know we're going to roll them over." And I said, fine. Because, you know,
He didn't care.
great investment guy. He didn't care. When he was confronted about these mortgages at the NHLPA meeting in 1989, where Eagleson was challenged by player reps, Trottier said he knew nothing about the loans.
I mean, in his mind, he probably didn't really know anything about them. He may have known that some stuff was happening, but
Yeah, he definitely knew that loans were there, but he knew nothing more about it. They just said, "Hey, we got loans." Okay.
he was like, "That's not really my milieu.
Area of expertise. Yeah.
What do you think I'm here for? Money? No.
Yeah.
I am strictly a yes man."
So despite its name, the bonus pension pool was not a pension fund. It was never registered with the Ontario Pension Commission. It operated as a slush fund at the personal use of Eagleson, often through his crony Sam Simpson. Eagleson had promised the players that these monies were for retirement benefits, but the loans refused to turn a profit in most cases. He eventually changed the name.
Under those terms.
Yeah. He eventually changed the name of the bonus pension pool to Employee Benefit Plan. Although it seems the only employees of the NHLPA who benefited from it were Alan Eagleson and his friends. So when this was raised, there were multiple investigations done, one by a lawyer named Bill Dermody. He did a report and presented it to the NHLPA board, and Eagleson claimed the report showed a profit of $216,000, more than a standard investment scheme, and it cleared him completely. And this is a standard Eagleson thing. Someone does a report, it's going to be in legalese, so he'll just waive it and say, "It clears me. It says to do nothing wrong. You're a stupid player. What are you going to do? Read it?
These guys can't read.
That is not an insignificant part of his ability to control them, is the fact that most players are uneducated high school dropouts functionally, especially in this time period.
Yeah.
And when he does run up against players who are educated, guys like Mike Mowbray, who went to university, they fight him. And it is the Americans who went to university who end up working to bring him down.
This is the beauty of the Canadian junior hockey system.
Yeah, it keeps them dumb. I believe Sidney Crosby has a GED.
Oh, 100%.
Don't worry, Gavin McKenna is going to get a quality university education.
Absolutely, yes. Another thing that's
Dated
going to be a
reference,
weird
yeah.
throwback in however many weeks this comes out.
That's right. So although Eagleson claimed that about the Dermody report, Dermody had only been allowed to review 3 loans, and I think I listed about 8 earlier. And Dermody's conclusion. Alan read the text of my report before it was issued. I did that as a courtesy. What he read and agreed to in that report was that there was a perception of his benefit by position. He could call that whatever he wants, but the point was explicitly clear. It was not condoning or clearing him of his past involvement with allowing escrow funds to be issued to his personal friends or clients. So they then hired Price Waterhouse, which is, of course, now PwC. Eagleson claimed in his newsletter, which was called Goals, that PwC had presented to the NHLPA Audit Committee and found no misappropriation of NHLPA funds. Of course, there was no audit committee any more than there was an investment committee. Pat Verbeek, the little ball of hate, a player rep, recalled no audit being presented at the meeting, but a speech was given that said the NHLPA expenses were, quote, just dandy, end quote. Dovey had not been allowed full access to the NHLPA files and was unable to determine if impropriety had occurred. We've already reviewed some of the expenses listed in the report, but here's some more for you. $730,000 across 3 years to Eagleson Ungerman to pay for the services of Alan Eagleson. Remember, he'll never take a penny from the NHLPA, or they can't pay him what he's worth. $15,000 to Raycon Consulting for renovation and moving expenses, $30,788 for special meetings, $32,000 for automobile leases. Guess who was driving the automobiles? $238,000 in airline tickets, $183,000 for hotels, and $39,000 in gifts. Gifts including Wimbledon tennis tickets and Bohemian Crystal.
Sure, why not?
Bohemian Crystal?
Bohemian Crystal. Eagleson billed the NHLPA $500 per night to sleep in the London apartment or Florida home that was owned by Alan Eagleson. The audit firm complained that Eagleson's law firm failed to produce receipts and concluded, we have been able to identify the nature of expenditures, but unable to determine how the NHLPA benefited from them. We're going to touch back on Hockey Canada now.
Just want to say this Bohemian Crystal stuff is pretty.
Was it worth the $39,000 in embezzled funds?
Look, I was curious. What the heck is Bohemian Crystal? It's really pretty.
I mean, so here's what you do, SJ. You become a player agent. You embezzle a bunch of money, run the NHLPA, embezzle more money, give yourself some crystal.
You've earned it.
I mean, I don't think I need to do crimes. I think I'm okay.
If we were to go to Alan Eagleson's house right now, what's the chance we find Bohemian Crystal there? It's
Seems high.
100%.
100%.
All right. So another area Alan Eagleson controlled was Hockey Canada's international tournaments. Following the success of the 72 Summit Series, Hockey Canada launched additional international gambits. The 1974 Summit Series between the Soviet Union and Canadian players in the World Hockey Association was then followed by the 1976 Canada Cup, which was the first true best-on-best hockey tournament. For this tournament, Hockey Canada was guaranteed a $600,000 profit by Eagleson, which he would then get paid $25,000. The primary way that Eagleson generated profit for the tournament was via advertising sales, just like the Summit Series. Eagleson's grab for advertising in 1972 was a last-minute thing designed to exploit an opportunity, but by 1976, he had a much slicker path established. Harcom Consultants, Arthur Harnett, Harcom, fucking names.
I mean, at least you really start to recognize the system.
When I was reading all this stuff, every time I saw a business name come up, I could just be like, "That's an Al Eagleson business right there." He's paying himself, so I could just see it.
Yeah.
Harcom Consultants, run by Arthur Harnett, got the rights to distribute advertising for the 76 Canada Cup. Eagleson, of course, consistently claimed no relationship to Harcom. Now, we know Harnett's been involved in his business in the past. The double IHF treasurer, a guy named Kurt Berglund, said, quote, "They say that before Harnett coughs in the morning, he must first call the Eagle," end quote.
Nice.
For example, Eagleson and Harnett directly did business together selling the advertising for Exhibition Stadium in Toronto, a 50-50 split. So the way it worked is Harnett didn't sell the ads himself. He would sell the rights to another company. So in this case, Carling O'Keefe Brewery for $2.5 million. Carling would then hire Harcom back to resell those rights. And then he would get commission for selling those ad spaces out. In this case, more than $1 million paid to Harcom. Harcom also held the right to sell board ads for the tournament. We know Eagleson only arranged for a guaranteed $600,000 to be returned to Hockey Canada. Clayton claims that Harnett said he only got 5% commissions on the sales, $50,000, but that simply doesn't fit. If Harnett took 5% commission on the $2.5 million, then he would have made $126 on the sale to Carling O'Keefe alone. But we know he resold the purchase time on behalf of Carling O'Keefe, and Clayton was able to discover at least another $2 million in TV ad time sold to other companies on behalf of the brewery. Another further $100,000 commission at only 5%. Interestingly enough, Toyota bought their ad space with 1/6 of the compensation coming in forms of a vehicle, which again, are vehicles. They just gave them cars.
Must be nice.
The amount of money kept going up. So the 78 Challenge Cup ad rate was $30,000 a minute, up from $20,000 for the Canada Cup in 76, also handled by Harcom. The 1981 Canada Cup was supposed to return $1 million to Hockey Canada. Harcom bought the advertising rights for $1.9 million, and Hockey Canada's expenses were nearing $1 million. So basically, we got to give them $1 million. We say that's what you got to do because that's how Al Eagleson gets his $25,000 check. But everything beyond that can be expenses. It can be commission. It can be legal fees. So by selling the rights to a company and then reselling the rights again on behalf of the company, they're double dipping all the commissions. They're double dipping all the fees. And they just rack this stuff up.
Nice.
Harnett sold ads for the 1982 NHL USSR series during a time when the NHLPA was entertaining a tender from American sports underwriters for the NHLPA's insurance contracts. Eagleson strongly suggested that American sports underwriter chairman Ted Dipple purchase a series of board ads of this series, noting that their current insurer, Crawley Warren, had bought $100,000 in ad space of the 1981 Canada Cup. Dipple refused to purchase the ads, and sports underwriters did not win the contract. Dipple said the terms probably weren't favorable anyway, but he still refused to buy.
He was like, "No, thank you. I do not want the kickback."
And that's it. Like,
to do the kickback.
We will talk a little bit more about the board ads, I think, later on. The board ads are, again, this is like he starts to get greedy, right? It starts off. He starts
to get greedy.
So we're talking about $1 million in money that goes back to the NHLPA or goes through firms. It gets greedier.
Good Lord.
Following the release following the release of John Papanik's 1984 expose into Eagleson and his operation, which was called The Man Who Rules Hockey in Sports Illustrated, Harnett got cold feet being involved with Hockey Canada advertising. Don't worry, a new company steps in, All Canada Sports Promotion, run by Irving Ungerman, who just so happens to be Al Eagleson's law partner.
Of course.
Wait, his company name was All Canada?
Yes. All Canada Sports Promotions.
Well, Eagleson didn't come up with that name.
No, clearly he didn't.
Yeah.
Don't worry, though. All Canada Sports Promotion paid $200,000 of their claimed revenue from the enterprise to Kingsmar Holdings.
Oh,
Kingsmar.
Kingsmar.
Now that's an Eagleson name.
That's an and the president, the legal president of that company at the time, was Arthur Harnett.
Oh boy.
So
What happened to Arthur Harnett? Did he do jail time?
no, Arthur Harnett. I couldn't find out. He kind of bails out of Eagleson during the mid '80s. So he moves from being an active participant to just kind of sitting on the board of a couple of these companies. From what I can tell, he gets out before the thing that Eagleson actually goes to prison for, which we are going to talk about very shortly, which is the board ad scheme.
Oh, we're getting into it now.
Yeah. So the 1987 Canada Cup.
I bet Alan Eagleson would have loved digital board ads.
Think of how many different ones he could get in his little double dipping scheme. It's like an infinite number of ads.
He would be like, I can sell the ads in the arena and on TV at the same time.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I can steal so much money and put it in Swiss bank accounts.
He would have gone nuts.
Would have gone. Let me get into this. This is good. The 87 Canada Cup was almost a disaster before it started when Wayne Gretzky considered not playing. Glenn Sather, who was an Eagleson ally, talked Gretzky into playing. Gretzky privately shared his thoughts with Russ Conway. Eagleson doesn't run it for nothing, believe me. For this particular tournament, Sam Shepard was hired to work for $72,000.
Why didn't Gretzky want to play?
This is when there's a lot of rumblings going on about Al Eagleson and Hockey Canada. So players are starting to realize Eagleson's stealing from them. And Gretzky, and we'll talk about Gretzky's role in this later on. Gretzky was very protective of his image. And one of the reasons he considered not playing was because he thought everyone was going to not play. But then when he found out other players were showing up, Glenn Sather was like, you can't be the one who, don't rock the boat, Gretz.
That's rocking the boat is the capital crime in hockey culture.
It is.
Oh yeah.
We'll talk about this a little bit later on, but Gretzky it could have gotten Eagleson out earlier, and he basically chickens out.
That sounds like the Wayne Gretzky I know. I'm sorry I'm being so gross, though, guys.
So, and the difference is, in 1987, he's still in Canada. By 1989, when the critical moment happens, he's in the United States. And I can't prove it. I looked and I looked and I looked for a connection. But I would bet money that Al Eagleson and knew Roy Cohn. And Roy Cohn was putting pressure on a lot of the people he was connected to, which included Wayne Gretzky and Donald Trump. I would bet he put pressure on Gretzky to back up Eagleson. And the 1989 meetings have become pivotal. I would put money on it. I just can't prove it. But we know Gretzky was at those meetings, and we know that Alan Eagleson had property in Florida next to other people who were big into Roy Cohn. I just can't bridge the gap closer. I looked
Very
for
suspicious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Red flags.
Red flags. So we don't have a lot of transparency into the financials for the 87 Canada Cup, but we do know that Air Canada bought $84,000 in board ads that were paid out in flight vouchers. These vouchers were used by Alan Eagleson to fly to places like Switzerland, Germany, and England, big hockey countries. Nancy Eagleson went to London, Paris, New York, Frankfurt, and Bombay.
They play a lot of hockey, ice hockey in Bombay.
Oh, they do.
Definitely.
Jill Eagleson went to Bombay as well as Frankfurt and New York. Trevor Allen and his daughter-in-law, Yasmin, they went to Winnipeg for some inexplicable reason. And Howard Ungerman, Irving's dad, used a voucher for $1,000 to fly to Chicago first class. So, again, we don't know a lot about that tournament, but what we do know shows that Eagleson was just taking these vouchers and giving them out to friends and family. All right, let's get into the biggie, the 1991 Canada Cup. In this Canada Cup, Hockey Canada sold the advertising rights to Labatt's for $4.2 million. These rights excluded the rights to sell the prime board ad space behind the nets. Eagleson negotiated this deal with Labatt Director of Media John Hudson. Hudson later gives evidence against Eagleson in his trial. Through All Sports, Eagleson resells the European advertising rights to a company called CWL Telesport. He explained to them that they couldn't sell ads for the end boards because Labatt's retained them, but All Sports had retained them. CWL paid $725,000 for the European advertising rights, 40% to Hockey Canada, the rest to Labatt's. Eagleson then hired advertising agents to sell that board space. This brought in $341,000 from the agents, and Alan Eagleson brought in another $69,000 directly by selling into the Weston Harbor Castle Hotel in Toronto. That's $410,000 in monies that touched neither Labatt nor Hockey Canada. He simply did not sell the boards. He told Hockey Canada he sold the boards to Labatt's, and he didn't.
Nice.
And at the same time, he took that money that was paid to him by CWL Telesport and put it into a Hockey Canada owned but Alan Eagleson operated Swiss bank account. In December 1991, Irving Ungerman cleaned out the board ads account. He wrote a check out to Hockey Canada for $375,000, Eagleson Ungerman for legal fees related to closed circuit boxing.
What?
For $53,000.
Yeah, why not?
And Sandhill Construction for $37,000, which was the company that was building Alan Eagleson's current house in Collingwood. When Eagleson deposited the Hockey Canada amount, which was $375,000 from the board ads independently sold, he said that was the payment from CWL for the European rights, which it absolutely was not. Which meant that Hockey Canada would not expect the full amount of money from Labatt's. Labatt's would not expect the full amount of money from Switzerland. Alan Eagleson set himself up with a Hockey Canada funded Swiss bank account.
Nice.
Now, during this period of time, someone in Al Eagleson's office is sending these financial transactions to Ross Conway. And he's reporting on them in the Lawrence Eagle Tribune. He comes second in Pulitzer voting this year for this series of articles. So Eagleson, rather than just release the money, he destroys the checks, replaces them by loans from that account, which apparently would look less like payoffs and money laundering. He went to John Hudson's at Labatt's and asked him to issue a new invoice accounting for the $375,000 difference. In other words, to make the misappropriated funds correct retroactively. He pushed Volker Kosters of CWL to do this. He actually did it because he didn't know the difference. He signed the new agreement that was dated back to December of 1990 instead of 1992 when it was actually signed. Eagleson then tried to return the $900,000 out of the Swiss bank account so they could forward the money to Labatt instead. These banking moves eventually went through, but they all ended up as part of his trial. We know the same companies that sold ads in 1991 for All Canada had sold them in 84 and 87. We don't know how much money was taken, but we can surmise that Eagleson was stealing money at this point in time. So this is straight up wire fraud, it's check fraud, mail fraud, all those frauds.
all the frauds.
You know, he runs the gamut on this one, and this is what he eventually goes to prison for. I don't think it's the worst thing he ever did, but this is what he goes to prison for.
It's big getting a gangster for tax evasion
Yeah.
vibes.
Almost all the stuff we've talked about is in some way illegal. It's just that he couldn't get caught. But this was 100%. He was destroying evidence. He was getting guys to try changing dates on documents. He was trying to cover up this money that was sitting in the Swiss bank account. Mm-hmm. And the whole goal was use the board ad direct sale money to replace the obligation that he would have to have withdrawn from the account to cover the European sales. Presumably, that money would have eventually ended up being used by Alan Eagleson in some way. And we can be almost sure he did it at least twice before.
Mm-hmm.
So this one was $375,000. So it's probably similar or a little bit less previous. And that is, of course, on top of all the other monies. Like the $53,000 he paid himself to administer all this money, right? Mm-hmm. So we'll probably draw there because we're going to get into the insurance stuff next. And I think that's an episode of its own. But how are people feeling?
Dude's the fucking worst, man.
I mean, definitely not enough people went to prison.
Yeah.
No, and he didn't go. He was only in prison for like 18 months.
Yeah.
He did lose his reputation. You know, like he lost everything he cared about in terms of power and legacy, but he does get to live a pretty cushy life. So, but yeah. Okay, folks, we're going to send you back to the main show, and we will have more on this next week. Thank you so much for listening. And yeah, that's it. Thank you so much for listening. All right, folks, hope you enjoyed that. This has been the Neutral Zone Hotel, written, hosted, and produced by us, the Neutral Zone Hotel crew. We're available online, neutralzonehotel.com. We're on Bluesky and YouTube at Neutral Zone Hotel. If you're having a great time, please hit that thumbs up button. 5 stars. If you want to talk to us, join our Discord, neutralzonehotel.com/Discord. We'd love to have a little chat with you. And folks, we will see you next week. Take care. So it's just another. Okay. Sorry, John. You're going to have to cut that out, or you can leave it in. I don't care if you want to laugh and be sneezing.